Here's the thing. The most important woman of the ancient Greek Golden Age is the same woman who taught Socrates, who studied with Pythagoras, who had Pericles, the most powerful man of the time, wrapped around her fingers, and yet you probably never heard of her. I'm talking, of course, about Aspasia. English speakers say Aspasia. We can still be friends. Spoiler alert, unfortunately, Aspasia was way too beautiful, too smart, and too free not to end up tried for impiety in the Athenian court, of course. Let me explain. Aspasia was born in Miletus, so in Athens, she was a foreigner, not a citizen. And her character is surrounded to this day by mystery, which is very annoying. She gets to Athens and she opens a school. Now, some believe it was a brothel, and while that might just be male historians being completely unable to fathom a woman being smarter than men, I think it is very plausible that she opened a brothel and that she was an hetera. Heteras were not the call girls that you picture today. They were professional courtesans who spent just as much time cultivating beauty as they did developing their minds and their talents. They were well-read, well-versed in dance, music, and rhetoric. They'd hang out with politicians, talk about philosophy, about politics. Most importantly, it was the only way for an Athenian woman to be a part of the Athenian intellectual life. Because Athenian women stayed home. All the cool things you read about Athens, the lively cultural life, the democratic proceedings staring at the Parthenon, thank you Pericles, the women were not part of it. They were home. So I think it would have made perfect sense for Aspasia to be an hetera, because that would have given her the freedom she needed. And the best men of the time, the most brilliant philosophers, would go speak to her, study with her. Plato tells us that Socrates himself, the father of Western philosophy, studied with her, learned rhetoric from her. She is the only woman Plato gives a speech to in his entire work. And then, of course, Pericles, the famous statesman, the most powerful man in Athens. He was crazy about her. They probably never married. Like I said, she wasn't a citizen, but she was his de facto wife for almost 20 years, and together they had Pericles the Younger. Plutarch tells us that he'd kiss her twice a day publicly when entering the market square. That was not normal. Athenian couples were affectionate with each other literally only when they had to pass on the family genes. She influenced Pericles, and so Athens' political life, so much that comedians at the time would make fun of it in their plays. It was even said that she wrote some of his speeches, and yes, even the famous funeral oration. And I mean, if you ask me, you could really see a female pen here. So when Pericles' enemies tried to get him out of the picture, they didn't attack him personally. They went after those that were closest to him. And so Aspasia was tried for impiety in front of the Athenian court. Pericles himself defended her. She was a foreigner, so she couldn't defend herself. And by the end of his speech, he was literally in tears. Thankfully, she was pronounced not guilty. It is interesting to see how she was the most important woman of her century, and yet we have so little to go by to figure out her story. I'm curious to know if you've been taught about her, or if this is the first time you hear her name.